I mean, but we know that. All right, yeah, we have to wrap it up. But let me just say this too. But we know that the dividing wall of hostility that Paul is talking about, if we go into the second temple, is that there was literally a partition that divided the outer courts of the Gentiles and the inner courts of the Israelites. That it was a literal dividing wall that stopped Gentiles, not Canaanites, any non-ethnic Israelite from entering into the area in which was the Jews. Why? Because they were not permitted to be into that area. So when Paul talks about the dividing wall of hostility, in context, he's dealing with literally the wall that separated Gentiles from Jews, not fleshly Israelites, Gentiles from all of Israel, and that wall has been destroyed. And now they have been able to come in together as one. That's why he says now they become a part of God's household. And other things. So we can chop it. Yeah, we can definitely chop it up. I just want to like that dividing wall is not a secret spiritual type wall that only relates to the Canaanites. It was a dividing wall that literally existed in the temple. That
I think that he's conflating something. This is the first time I've ever heard a Christian say that the outer court that's for the Gentiles is a wall of hostility. Especially because Jews would have to pass through that outer court in order to get to the inner court. It had nothing to do with hostility. It's the holy and it's the most holy and it's the not holy. And the Gentiles were still allowed to come and bring their sacrifices unless they were Edomites after a certain generation, or unless they were Ammonites and Moabites. They were not allowed to bring in their sacrifices. Midgets and things like that. They weren't allowed to bring their sacrifices. But that's not a middle wall of partition, but I think he's conflating it with the concept of the veil that's in the Holy of Holies.
You was talking about the dividing wall, right? Hostility.
Yeah. I definitely wanted to hear more about that because you said that the wall of partition, I don't know if you were affirming that it was for sure, but that it could be the wall to the outer court that's for the Gentiles.
No, so there's a so if you read in like the works of the works of Josephus, I don't know what your positions on him is or not, but when you read his works in two chapters, chapter 5 and then chapter 6. So this is chapter 5 in the works of Josephus, and so it's it's 2, but this is the first one, and so it's talking about the foundations of the temple, right? And so it says, I'll just start at 190. It says, for the works that were above those foundations, they were not unworthy of such foundations, for there were cloisters were double, and the pillars of them belonging were 25 cubits in height, and they supported the cloisters. These pillars were of one entire stone, each of them, and that stone was white marble, right? And it's just describing all of it, right? But so then if you get down to 93, it says, when you go through these first cloisters unto the second court of the temple, there was a partition made of stone all around, whose height was 3 cubits. Its construction was very elegant. Upon it stood pillars at equal distance from one another, declaring the law of purity, some in Greek and some in Roman letters, that no foreigner should go within that sanctuary. For the second court of the temple was called the sanctuary. And so this is one source that's talking about when I said that Ephesians 2, when Paul says that the dividing wall of hostility, that this is the reference point of what he's saying is this wall that literally separated out foreigners from the Jews. Then and then I say this, and then and then when you go to this is the work still. This is chapter 6. And so now you remember, I mean, you know about Titus. And so this is the battle, right? This is about the destruction is about to go down. And look what he says. He says, now Titus was deeply affected with this state of things and reproached John and his party he said to them, have you, vile wretches that you are, by our own permission. So he's talking to the Jews. By our permission, you put up this partition wall before your sanctuary. And so he's saying, listen, we allowed you to put this wall up, meaning the Jews went to them and said, hey, we want this wall. But this is the reason I'm bringing it out, because this is how deep it is. Look what it says. It says, have you not been allowed to put up the pillars thereunto belonging at due distance, and onto it to engrave in Greek and in your own letters this prohibition: no foreigner should go beyond that wall. Have not we given you leave to kill such as go it, though he were a Roman? So then he says, we've allowed you that any foreigner, we've given you permission that if a foreigner was to come through there, that we've given you permission to even kill them from coming behind that wall. That wall was a wall of hostility. And I believe that when you get into Acts 21, if you remember, they wanted to kill Paul. Why? Because they said that he brought a Greek, right, Trophimus, the Ephesian, into the temple, and they thought that they had seen him take him beyond the wall, right? He said he's brought a Greek into the temple and defiled the holy place, for they had previously seen him in the city, and they thought that Paul had brought him into the temple. But Paul wouldn't have did it, because Paul understood. The only reason Paul was even doing the helping out the 4 men who had to do the Nazarite vow, and the only reason he did his purification vow was because he came from the land of the Gentiles. And the Mishnah says, and 2:9 says that you will be unclean if you have the dirt from abroad, or the dirt from the nations on you. And so Paul is only doing all of this stuff to calm down the issue of the Jews in the city. So he wouldn't have went and caused a greater uproar by then taking the Greek into the temple behind a wall that he knew was the wall of hostility. So and I can go back to anything you want me to look at, but I'm only bringing that up to say, so when I said in our debate that there was a literal, physical, actual wall that was a dividing wall of hostility, that's the reference point on what I was talking about.
I look at it as more of hospitable, because you did state that, they were disallowing Gentiles from making sacrifices. That's literally where they go to make their sacrifices.
Yeah, to the you talking about into the court of the Gentiles?
Yeah, like the outer court is a space for Gentiles, and there's a wall around the whole temple, encompassing everybody. So, I see Gentiles always being allowed to come in and make their sacrifices. I don't see them saying, hey, you can't, but there is a place where they're supposed to stop, just like there's a place where Israelites are supposed to stop unless they are, allowed by bloodline to go into the Holy of Holies.
Yeah.
So for me, it don't look like hostility.
No, you got it, my fault.
No, you good, bro. I was just saying I don't see it as a hostility.
Yeah, no, I think obviously there's some, we know there was always even times especially in the Old Testament, where we see where certain things will require them to be outside of the courts. So I get that. The issue, the difference though, and why I'm calling it, and let me also say, I agree with you when you talk about a place of hospitality in relationship to being able to have a place, Gentiles. Now, obviously we're defining Gentiles differently, but you know what I mean by Gentiles, and then, God-fearers or even proselytes. So I agree on a level of hospitality. The problem though, why it's still a wall of hostility, is the reason I'm saying that is because of this here, where it's written that no foreigner can go behind this wall. And if they are to go behind the wall, there's punishment by death for that. So anything that if I do this, if I come into your area, because we're not even talking about the holies of holies here, right? So if I come into your area, I can die. This is punishable by death to me. That's why I'm calling it a wall of hostility. That's why Paul is calling it a dividing wall of hostility, because it allowed you to come so far, but then you could not actually embrace or be welcomed fully into the community. And then in this sense, you can literally be put to death for even trying to enter into the space in which the Israelites were. Even when you're looking at these Greek words, the idea of the reconciliation. What did not allow there to be a fullness of reconciliation in which two are made one? Well, it was that there was, this dividing wall of hostility.